Hi, everybody. Welcome back. East's Cornucopia of Horror, number 3 or 4, or I lost count. I'm going to try to keep this video as succinct as I possibly can. I always say that, and my videos are like 10, 12 minutes long. But seriously, I don't even know if I'm going to talk about the plot of this movie too much. I want to talk about some other things, but if you couldn't tell by the title, this is Hellraiser 2022, directed by Dave Bruckner, I think his name was. Um, this is kind of a reboot, remake, who knows, kind of thing of Hellraiser, made by Hulu. Yeah, so let me give you a quick non-spoiler thing. If you don't, if you haven't seen it yet, did I like it or did I dislike it? Disliked it. I'm gonna give it 2 thumbs down. I gave it a 2 out of 5. At times, I was thinking a 2.5. Like, this is a mediocre movie, but there's some cool things in here, which there are. But ultimately, when I finished it, it kind of felt like a waste of time, which is always not a good feeling you want to have with a film. So that's that. Okay, let's go into the spoilers. Um, so, I have a couple things that are pros and a couple things, well, one thing that's a con, really. And then I'm going to talk about a couple things that are, I don't know, kind of weird, but I wanted to talk about them. Pros. They added some lore. They changed the lore. They expounded upon it. Expounded? I don't know. We're going to use that word today. They expunged the lore. Um, and at times it was interesting. It was like a different take on things. The way that the lament configuration, or I don't know what it's called in this movie, but the Lemashand configuration, I think it was called in the original book, Hellbound Heart. There's a lot of like this. There's a lot of lore that they've created. Different configurations it goes in, different prizes that you can pick from once you've sacrificed enough people to it or to the Cenobites. And at times I found that interesting, and at times it was like, this is like kind of, I don't know, like Scooby Doo. This is like turning it into a slasher movie. Uh, that all of these kind of go into my cons, but let me just say that was sometimes interesting. Another good one, practical effects usage. Okay, and all of these, like I said, are going to have a con attached with them. But yeah, there were practical effects in this, which should be standard for a horror movie, but it's not. So we have to applaud when they use practical effects, which they should be using. And some of them looked pretty good. I can't say they look bad. Sometimes they did look bad. I thought that they looked kind of flat and mediocre, but when they were good, they were good. So I thought that was cool. The Cenobites costumes, their designs were okay. We'll get into that too. But in terms of the effects, they actually were wearing suits and makeup and prosthetics and stuff. And I'm sure that there was CGI enhancement in there, but they were suits, which again, like you would expect them to wear that. But you never know these days, right? Like they could CGI everything. Like they could pull an Avatar 2 and just CGI this whole movie. So yeah, that was cool. And again, a con. Sometimes they didn't look good. They looked cheap, like Halloween costumes, very rubbery looking. Not even a stylized kind of thing. Just it looked like a rubber Halloween costume. You know, it needs to look wet and gross, and it didn't. So that made them not very scary sometimes. But another con, very scary scenes sometimes, on the other hand. And I will say there was maybe 1 or 2 scenes in this movie that I I was pretty bored the whole time, but there were like 1 or 2 scenes that were kind of creepy. One in particular, this is my favorite scene in the movie, and if they had kept that feeling for the whole movie, it wouldn't have saved the movie. This is like the running theme with my cornucopia of horror this year is like something that could be changed that could save a movie, but it doesn't really save the movie, but something that could highly impact it. And that this is a scene is a great example of that. This woman that you meet at the beginning of the movie who kind of randomly pops back in, they do some Nancy Drew bullshit to find this woman, and they get to her, and she stupidly touches the fucking box like an idiot, even though she's terrified of it, cuts herself, starts the ritual, and then she goes to the hospital because she can't breathe, and the hospital room starts transforming into the Cenobites realm or whatever. It's always some like it's like the upside down. And some people are gonna be pissed I made that connection, but it is though. It's kind of like the upside down, or kind of like the after from uh, or the further from Insidious, just a weird flipped upside down version. I mean, I'm sure most of you know this, but for folks who like don't have any experience with the Hellraiser series, and yeah, this scene that starts changing, it's creepy, and then like the Cenobite slowly walks in the room, and the woman's like looks like she's gonna shit her pants, and the Cenobite doesn't even go over to her. The Cenobite just kind of walks over to another bed and just stands there, and that was really creepy. It was shot well. The transformation scenes were done with CGI, so they didn't look good. The CGI in this movie is mediocre. Um, so I kind of didn't like that. Like that kind of soured the scene. If that's would be quite a transition to do with practical effects, but it could be done. Like I always, there's no excuses should be made if you've seen a movie like A Nightmare on Elm Street and you know how they did those shots with practical effects on a very low budget. So yeah, sometimes when I see stuff like this, I'm like, yeah, I guess it would be really hard to have the set piece like physically moving and having the light come in. But no, especially with the amount of money they had to make this, they could have done that. And that's just a lot of that. I'm just kind of rambling now, which I didn't want to do, but that's a lot of this movie is you're just like, why did they do it like that? Or why didn't, and it's the answer is because they were lazy. This wasn't like, if they told you this was going to be the next big Hellraiser movie or whatever, they were lying to you because this is just another um, quickly put together, cheap but not super cheap, just kind of cash cow movie, right? And certainly aimed at a younger, so I not to be like like grumpy old man, but like a Gen Z audience. Really, I think I'm not saying that like you could be 60 and enjoy it. It's like more power to you always, right? Uh, but it just seems made for kids, which is why I think it's like some Scooby Doo bullshit slasher movie. And that's basically all of my pros, man. Like there weren't a lot. And my cons, I wrote everything else. Um, like the main character in this is this like drug addict girl named Riley, I think her name was. Actually, funny enough, the actress who played her is Pamela Adlin's daughter. Pamela Adlin, I mean, a great voice actress and comedian. She was on Louis as Louis' friend. Um, yeah, I thought that was interesting, but not great acting. The script is not good, and this whole like addict character thing, that's a trope that is so overdone in horror movies. It's like as soon as I saw that and they were trying to do these like over serious scenes of them screaming at each other and stuff, and I'm like, I don't need that. And this like I don't want Hellraiser to be a slasher, but I also don't need like these long scenes of poor acting and a poor attempt at being dramatic, because this isn't a dramatic movie, it's a horror movie. And that doesn't really move the plot along, even though it adds to their characterization. It just feels forced and contrived. And then I've just seen this a million times. So as soon as I saw that, I thought, okay, here we go. And like with the exception of those tiny flashes of brilliance I talked about, it was just very mediocre. The whole plot line with I think the Roland character who is actually hiding out in the walls of the mansion still. I'm not going into the plot, but I'm assuming you've seen it as I'm talking. But that was like, again, that was like Scooby Doo bullshit. It was shot so goofily, and then he goes into a scene where it's like this crazy like exposition dump where he like tells you his whole plan with a voiceover, and I was like, this is so goofy. Like, what were they thinking? And then there were scenes with Pinhead that were cool, and then the scene is ruined. And then it's like 13 Ghosts sometimes, like, or House on Haunted Hill, and they're like trapped in this mansion, and they have like trap doors and shit they can put down that'll stop the Cenobites for some weird reason. It was just, it was laughably bad at points. It was like, this, people are saying this is good. This is not good, man. If you were to take, this is another one of those like spec script kind of movies, where like it's just a script that got passed around, and then they were like, well, we finally got the right people to do Hellraiser. That is, people that don't really have any integrity or anything, and we'll just use this script and put like all the Hellraiser characters in it. That's what this movie feels like. I'm being really harsh, but um, There's no other way to put it. You know what I mean? Like this is a Disney-fied, very toned down. It is rated R, and there's some gory moments in it, but not like if you watch horror movies, there's nothing in here where you're going to be like horrified. And yet people are saying, excuse me, people are saying this is like super brutal, and I'm like, what have you cats been watching? There's nothing in here you haven't seen before. I can't. I'm just gonna continually go on, kind of bagging on this movie, and I don't want to too much. Um, I think if you've never seen Hellraiser and you're younger, you might like it. Not again, you could like Hellraiser and watch it. You might find it interesting, but I can't see the appeal of this. And I gave it a 2 out of 5 instead of a 2.5. Mediocre. Mediocre. I might watch once in a blue moon, right? But I don't know if I ever want to watch this again. It was kind of boring to sit through, and I had to give it 2 out because of that. It was already not that great, but I thought I don't even know if I'm going to want to watch this again next year as part of my Halloween, watching marathon, because it's really just not that good. Um, so yeah, it was weird. Let's talk about real quick before I end this because I'm just going to keep going on and I don't want to be too negative. The Cenobites, like I said, their designs were kind of cool. You don't. It's weird. Like I could go talk in circles about this feeling like a Scooby Doo generic slasher movie. Um, they treat the Cenobites like slasher killers in this, right? Like with the weird sacrificing thing and all that kind of stuff. They've taken all the sex and BDSM and leather and they've Disneyfied it, right? Because yeah, Disney. Um, but they are actually weirdly prominent for a lot of the movies. Sometimes they just stand there. It reminded me of the SpongeBob thing. He's standing there menacingly because like they can't go into the house because there's this unexplained metal gate, and they just stand there, and it's supposed to be threatening, and it's not. It's like black humor, and that's how like you see them a lot of the times, and then you see them chase after people sometimes, like it's fucking like Jason or something, and I'm like, this is not good, man. So I don't like the way that they were used in this movie and the way they were portrayed. Their costumes, like I said, didn't look that great at times. Wow, I'm being really negative now. But I thought the designs were cool. And there were a different couple you got to see. Sometimes they were real quick shots, but like Pinhead or the High Priest or whatever, I thought that design was really cool too. Now I think that the dress thing that didn't work. It didn't even look that good. But the whole neck thing and everything up look cool. And how did Jamie Clayton do as Pinhead or the High Priest? Fine, but mediocre, man. Like sometimes part of it is just the way she was used and the dialogue. Like it just wasn't good most of the time. Again, like little tiny flashes of brilliance. But how did Jamie Clayton do acting wise? Again, like the best she could do given the material. Although, the voice is fine, actually, I thought. I mean, it's obviously very digitally altered, but you still can hear her acting through the voice, which is how it was with Doug Bradley, too. And there were times where I just felt like I could hear her voice coming through. Like her acting felt not good at times. And it wasn't like consistently, but there were a few times when her acting was like, I don't know. I don't know how to explain it. Like sometimes she had a really commanding voice and was very detached and creepy, and times it just felt like it was probably just Jamie Clayton reciting her lines. It was it was again it was like the movie like mediocre, but maybe sometimes not so hot. So yeah, that was Hellraiser 2022. Very negative, but I mean 2 out of 5 is not a good rating. But do I recommend it? I mean, like I said, it wasn't as bad as the past ones. So yeah, maybe give it a shot as a fun popcorn flick. You might not like it though. Um, but again, it's like that's what everybody's saying. It's better than the previous ones. Like, well, I would fucking hope so. Those movies were like scam movies made to keep the rights to the franchise. Like I would hope it would be better. And I don't even think it's that much better. I don't. I think it's a little bit better, but not by much. So that's Hellraiser. Peace out. Let me know what you're up to. See you later.